Yes, enough with the dry stuff. We're moving on to sort of shared values in democracy. So, of course, both Ireland and India are democratic nations. They're part of the international community, and they strive to uphold the right to sovereignty, uphold the rule of law, protecting trust in institutions, and freedom of speech. And of course, both share their democratic roots in the struggle for independence. As well, Ireland and India have signed a number of agreements dating back to the late 20th century, and this is pertinent to like air transport, technology, and scientific and cultural cooperation, which I'm going to talk a bit more about later. And both governments conduct regular intergovernmental exchange. Actually, there has been 3 presidential visits from Ireland to India, and 2 from India to Ireland. And the first Prime Minister of India, I don't want to mispronounce his name, but Prime Minister Nehru, he visited Ireland in 1956 and 1949. I'm not sure if anybody knows this, but the Prime Minister of Ireland, like the current serving Prime Minister of Ireland, Prime Minister Leo Varadkar, he's of Indian origin. And he's the first and the youngest person to hold office in Ireland. And he's also a licensed general practitioner, so a GP, a doctor. And he's, well, it's a bit complicated, but our domestic politics in Ireland, we have like a rotating kind of prime minister seat because we have a coalition in government at the moment. But he also served in as a prime minister between 2017 and 2020. He only restarted his seat in office this year, December. Yes, I think in terms of like peace and prosperity, I would say that I think countering terrorism, of course, in the 21st century, that's become a major issue, a hot button issue, of course, for the US, but I think for India as well, due to conflicts on the border with Pakistan. But of course, I think was something important to note. It was after the Pulwama attack in the territory of Jammu and Kashmir in 2019. I'm sure you know, which killed 40 Indian police. So it was the deputy prime minister and also foreign minister of Ireland, Simon Coveney. He condemned the bombing publicly, and he affirmed Ireland's support to work with India and in the international community to counter terrorism. I'll also get into that a bit more later. So going into the Indian diaspora in Ireland is really interesting. I say so. Of course, a lot of countries right now are experiencing a surge in population. Well, apart from South Korea, where I am now, and Japan, which they're the 2 most famous for declining population right now. But both India and Ireland are having a surge in population. There's been a 7.6% increase in the population in Ireland since 2016 over the last 6 years. And most of the population are concentrated in the capital, which is Dublin. And that population has grown by over 100,000 people during this time. There's nearly 1.5 million people living in the capital, so it's very concentrated. It's quite a small capital in Europe. It's nothing like London as well, if you're thinking of going. But there are 50,000 people of Indian origin living in Ireland, and that's 1% of the Irish population. Right now it's 5.12 million people. And I think most of the Indian community in Ireland, they work in very highly skilled work in like healthcare, in information communications technology, engineering, and they hold a lot of senior management positions. So if we bounce off of that and go into economic relations, I think trade between India and Ireland is quite significant. I only have figures from 2019, which are the latest figures I have so far. But the bilateral trade in goods reached $1 billion US in total between 2018 and 2019. And just some dry figures, but they're very important to know. I think India's exports to Ireland were worth $681 million, and Irish exports to India were worth $382 million. And I think the trade in services is even more significant. It seems that it's a growing vector for bilateral economic relations. So that reached totally $4 billion US in that time. So another area that's really significant is tourism. In 2019, of course, before the pandemic hit, there was an estimated 45,000 Indian people who visited Ireland, and 42,000 Irish people visited India. So there's been also some changes in like visa, maybe visa requirements. So that's made it easier for Irish people to visit and for Indian people to visit Ireland. But for any Indian people who are traveling to Ireland, you can kind of benefit from this what is it called? This British Ireland visa scheme. So you don't need to apply for separate tourist visas to travel to Ireland if you are also traveling to the UK. And that's been since 2015. So moving on from that, I think other really positive changes that's been happening in Ireland that could benefit the Indian community. So this kind of ranges from civil and educational to cultural areas. So in 2019, the Irish government permitted the wearing of turbans and hijab in police uniform. So formerly in police uniform, they permitted the freedom to work without a work permit for spouses of people working in critical skill sectors. So there's a special work permit for that. And they also lifted a quota on chefs from countries outside the European Economic Area, which is the EU plus, I think, Norway, Liechtenstein, and maybe was it Switzerland, I think. So there's kind of some growing ties there. In terms of education, which I think a few of us are students, so I think this is really interesting. Ireland is the only English-speaking country in the EU which uses English as its main language, so it offers a greater scope of educational possibilities for Indian students. And Indian students are increasingly choosing Ireland as their destination for third level study, so bachelor's degree and above. In 2019, there was an estimated 5,000 students from India registered at an Irish third level education institution. There is over 200 scholarships offered to Indian students, and there is a special visa scheme called the Stay Back Visa Scheme in Ireland, which permits work in mostly in IT, pharmaceuticals, and medical area. But that's after you've graduated. There is a scheme like that to continue to stay for a period and work, and then. Which is quite nice, I thought, in cultural exchange. So Ireland hosts a number of Indian cultural heritage events. So there's International Yoga Day. Of course, there's like the annual Indian Film Festival, which is very big. And there's also commemorative celebrations for Gandhi and for Sri Guru Nanak Dev Ji. I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong. So for his 550th birth anniversary and for the 150th birth anniversary of Gandhi, there's large celebrations in cooperation with the embassies. So I know I've been nearly talking for 20 minutes, but I'm almost I have a couple more points to make. I think this part's really interesting in terms of international relations. So cooperation in multilateral forums, I think, of course, both India and Ireland are members of the G20, where Ireland is a member under EU membership. And then they're also members of the World Trade Organization. And I think this is really important going forward for goals in sustainability and clean energy and the emphasis on digital transformation in the last few years. And also shared standards in trade is very important. That can be seen through the large bilateral trade figures I mentioned earlier. So I think as well, you might already know that India assumed the G20 presidency on the 1st of December this year, and they took over from Indonesia. And of course, it's a rotating position, but I think it really underscores India's importance internationally as a middle power. And they will be also hosting the G20 summit next year. And I think this is also in connection with India's growing population and economy. I think that's really important. I do hope there will be some solutions in terms of population growth and responsibility on a diplomatic forum in terms of the Russian invasion of Ukraine and so forth. So I hope for that. And then if I do talk about maybe some challenges just to finish up this talk and go into if anyone has any questions. The thing about Ireland, I would say, which is concerning for everybody, but also maybe for Indian workers or students, we have a housing crisis in my country. And as I mentioned before, the capital, Dublin of my country, is highly concentrated in the population. We have a lack of housing, and I think I've experienced it myself where the prices are crazy and there's not much choice, or you might end up like sharing housing with people or living in not all of the housing is up to standard, I would say, especially in student accommodation. So I think that's definitely one challenge for Indian students, especially who may be more vulnerable to prices, especially. I think just to relate this in figures, Ireland has the least available homes per 1,000 inhabitants in the OECD, according to data from 2020. And I think, yes, as I said, it's going to be a significant challenge going forward. I think, for students, what's very popular or what's the most cost-effective solution is probably house sharing for students. And again, I think for India and Ireland, I think, of course, it's not the same, but I think coming together to improve equality for women is really important, especially in terms of childcare and opportunity in the workplace. There are forums for that, but of course, this is more on a diplomatic front. I also have reservations about to what extent that can be achieved bilaterally. But yes, this is the end of what I have to say. I hope, I hope it was interesting at least. I'm sorry if it was boring. I try my best, and yes, I will hand it over to the next person now. Thank you.
Thank you, Sabrine, for your wonderful presentation. And
Thank you.
it was uh, every aspect was like almost uh, covered in your presentation. I just want to know about like, so there is a rise of populism and far right in Europe. So is the politics of this Irish politics is gonna affect by it? Also, there is one question which is not really related to India Ireland, but it is related to foreign policy establishment of Ireland. How Irish diaspora in United States of America impacts its foreign policy, or does it play a role as a soft power uh, for Ireland in United States of America? As we know of the Israel, like the Jew population of Israel does that, and we know that we like there is a significant Irish population, and there are a few Irish nationals who went on the top post in United States of America also. So does it play a role in Irish foreign policy? So these two questions from my side, and I will open the questions to audience also. They can directly ask questions to Sabrine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So to draw on your first question about the rise in populism in Europe, I think I wouldn't say I would say there's a couple of countries where that's particularly concerning, especially Hungary, Belarus, of course, um, Italy as well, with the election recently of Giorgia Meloni. I would say our Irish politics is very particular. Actually, we have we have a conservative ruling, and they have been in power for over 70 years on and off. I think, and this is very much linked to the independence movement and what I've explained about how Ireland sort of kickstarted its independence with violence, I would say. So it's linked to that. But anyway, yeah, I wouldn't have any concerns about populism in Ireland. Of course, there are, you know, groups of people who would support it or who would be like racist or something. But I would say in general, we have a lot of international communities in Ireland. I think Ireland's taken in is it 65,000 Ukrainian refugees now. We have a large like Polish community, Romanian community, of course, Indian community, Chinese community as well. So, and I've never heard of, I don't know, I've heard of perhaps like incidents of racism, but I wouldn't say it's, yeah, uh, broadly spread out in society. I think that's like pockets of people. So yeah, we don't have, and it's certainly not translated into politics, especially with, you know, our prime minister being of Indian origin, I think, and we're a very, I would say, free and open society in general. Irish people are quite friendly in general, so I wouldn't have expressed reservations about that. And then for your second question, I'm not sure if from what I've understood, I think you're asking, does Ireland's power as a middle power translate to that of power like Israel, which has very close relations with the US? And I would say no, because first of all, Ireland is not a member of NATO in Europe, so we have virtually no military power. What else can I say? I think we of course we're an international a global partner of NATO. We're of course we're a democracy. We collaborate on multilateral forums, especially the UN. But in terms of just economic power, military power, and especially cooperation in technology and cyberspace, where Israel is kind of leading in that. I wouldn't say it's the same. Especially we have very high standards and rules on the use of force in Europe because of the North Atlantic Treaty, which formed NATO. So yes, I think Israel is being in the Middle East. They have different rules that they can use, and yeah, there is a big. I guess it does translate back to the Second World War, where the U.S. has supported Israel and the Jewish community to have their own land. And there is a big investment, especially financially, by the U.S. in Israel. And of course, there is an Irish community in America. A lot of Americans are of Irish origin, dating back to the famine times. But I think in the modern era, in like the challenges we face now, I don't think Ireland to be the same. Sorry for the long-winded answer. I hope that was kind of answers your questions.
So if we have any other questions to Sabrine, like
Yeah.
audience, anybody can ask, or you can type it in chat box.
Yeah, you can type in the chat as well. Okay. It seems that no one else has any questions.
Yes, I think nobody has any question as of now. So thank you for having us, Sabrine, and thank you for this wonderful presentation. And
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I hope it was interesting.
Yes, it was really interesting.
All right. Okay. Good luck. Good luck to everyone. See you soon, maybe. All right. Yes.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.